March 15, 1963, 2:23 p.m. Sing Sing Penitentiary. 12 guards aimed Winchester rifles at Bumpy Johnson's chest. Warden Harold Morrison stood 3 meters away, sweat pouring down his forehead, hand trembling on his pistol holster. "You have 3 seconds to kneel, Johnson, or my men fire. 1, 2. Bumpy didn't move. He looked Morrison in the eyes and said 7 words that would change everything. "Shoot, and explain it to the governor afterward." What happened in the next 8 minutes not only saved Bumpy Johnson's life, but forced the New York prison system to rewrite its rules forever. But to understand what Bumpy did in that yard, you need to understand how he got there. January 1963. Bumpy Johnson was sentenced to 5 years in Sing Sing for extortion. It was the 3rd time he had set foot in a federal prison, but this time was different. District Attorney Robert Morgenthau wanted to make an example. He wanted to break the King of Harlem publicly. Bumpy was sent to Block D, the most violent wing, corrupt guards, racist gangs, prisoners who would kill for a pack of cigarettes. It was where they put the ones they wanted to see dead. Warden Morrison had a simple plan. Let the prison do the dirty work. With no Bumpy in Harlem, the 5 Italian families could finally take control of the numbers racket. Morrison was receiving $5,000 a month from Frank Costello. All he had to do was make sure Bumpy didn't leave Sing Sing alive, or if he did, that he left broken. Bumpy arrived on a freezing Monday, handcuffs on his wrists, chains on his ankles. 6 guards escorted him to his cell. Number 147, 2 meters by 3. A concrete bed, a bucket, nothing else. His cellmate was a man named Tommy Rage, 2 meters tall, 130 kilos, convicted of killing 3 men with his bare hands. Tommy worked for the Aryan Brotherhood, the white supremacist gang that controlled Block D. On the first night, Tommy made things clear. "What are you? Black? In here you're nothing. You're not a king, you're not a boss, you're trash. And trash stays where I tell it to. You sleep on the floor, you eat after me, and if I tell you to lick my boots, you lick them. Got it?" Bumpy was sitting on the concrete bed. He didn't look at Tommy, he just said calmly, "I understand that you're going to learn a lesson in the next 24 hours, and it's going to hurt." Tommy exploded. He lunged at Bumpy with clenched fists. But Bumpy was fast, much faster than he looked for a 55-year-old man. He dodged the first punch, blocked the second, and then, with a precise move he had learned on the streets of Harlem 30 years earlier, Bumpy struck Tommy in the throat. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough for Tommy to drop to his knees, choking, eyes wide with panic. Bumpy crouched down and whispered in Tommy's ear, "You have a choice. You can be my enemy and spend the next 5 years afraid to sleep. Or you can respect me, and I guarantee no one in this block lays a hand on you. Choose now." Tommy chose. The next morning, he told the entire Aryan Brotherhood, "Bumpy Johnson is untouchable. Anyone who messes with him messes with me." But the troubles were just beginning. Warden Morrison was furious when he learned that Bumpy had tamed Tommy Rage in one night. So he escalated. 3 days later, during recreation time in the yard, 5 members of the Mexican gang Los Serpientes surrounded Bumpy. Their leader, a man named Eduardo Vega, was holding an improvised knife, a 10-centimeter blade sharpened from bed metal. Morrison had paid Vega $2,000 to eliminate Bumpy. But what Morrison didn't know was that Bumpy had eyes everywhere. A Mexican cook named Roberto had overheard the conversation between Vega and a corrupt guard. Roberto owed his life to Bumpy. 10 years earlier, when Roberto was on the streets of Harlem, Bumpy had saved his younger brother from a debt that would have killed him. Roberto found Bumpy 2 hours before the attack. "Mr. Johnson, Vega is coming for you today. 5 men. He has a knife. Guard Peterson will look the other way." Bumpy didn't seem worried. He just asked, "Does Vega have family on the outside?" Roberto nodded. "Wife and 3 kids in the Bronx. They live on 138th Street. Bumpy wrote a note. It was addressed to Illinois Gordon, his closest associate in Harlem. The note simply said, "Eduardo Vega, 138th Street. Protect the family. Make sure nothing happens. But let Vega know you're watching." Roberto smuggled the note out through a guard Bumpy had in his pocket. 6 hours later, Illinois Gordon and 2 men were standing in front of the Vega family's apartment. They did nothing. They just stood there, watching, waiting. The message was clear. Mess with Bumpy and your family pays. Someone called Vega in prison, told him that men from Harlem were watching his house. Vega went pale. He sought out Bumpy that afternoon. Not in the yard, not in front of anyone. In the laundry room, where they could talk alone. "Mr. Johnson, I don't want trouble. They told me to do a job, but I didn't know that you had that kind of reach." Bumpy stopped folding clothes. "You have kids, Vega?" Vega swallowed hard. "3, 2 boys and a girl. And you want to see them grow up?" "Yes, sir." "Then here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Morrison you tried to kill me, but I'm too fast. You keep your knife, you keep your money, and you owe me a favor. Someday, I'll need something in here, and you'll do it for me. No questions." Vega agreed. And just like that, Bumpy turned a paid assassin into an ally. But Morrison wasn't finished yet. 2 weeks later, Morrison summoned Bumpy to his office. It was a small, claustrophobic room with bars on the windows and a single fan that didn't work. Morrison was sitting behind his desk, smiling like a shark. "Johnson, I have bad news. You're being transferred. To solitary. 2 weeks. Security protocol." Bumpy kept his voice calm. "Security protocol for what?" Morrison leaned forward. "Because I said so, and in here, my word is law." Solitary in Sing Sing was legalized torture. A 1.5 by 2 meter cell. No light, no sound. Food thrown in once a day. 17 hours of total darkness. The idea was to break the prisoner's mind, make him beg to get out, make him accept anything. Bumpy spent 14 days in the darkness. But he didn't break. He meditated, planned, thought. And when he came out, his eyes were sharper than ever. Morrison had made a mistake. He had given Bumpy time to think. And a thinking Bumpy Johnson was more dangerous than an army. March 1963. Bumpy was back in Block D when he discovered something that would change everything. A young prisoner named Marcus Williams was being beaten by guards in the basement. Marcus was 19, convicted of stealing a car. First offense. But Marcus had made the mistake of complaining about spoiled food. And Morrison used violence to maintain order. Bumpy heard the screams. He went down to the basement, where 3 guards were kicking Marcus on the floor. Bumpy didn't shout, didn't run. He just stood in the doorway and said loud enough to echo, "Stop. Now." The guards turned. One of them, a brutal man named Sergeant Dalton, laughed. "Or what, Johnson? What are you gonna do?" Bumpy took a step forward. "I'm going to make sure the New York Times knows you beat unarmed kids. That the governor knows. That every mother of every prisoner in this institution knows their sons aren't safe here." Dalton spat on the floor. "You're bluffing. Nobody believes a criminal." Bumpy smiled. "Cold. Dangerous. You're right. Nobody believes 1 criminal, but they believe 12 criminals. 50, 200. And I have 200 men in this prison who would do anything for me. White, black, Mexican, doesn't matter. Because I treat them like human beings. Something you never understood." Dalton hesitated. And in that hesitation, Bumpy saw weakness. He continued, "Let the kid go. Now. And we forget this happened. Or tomorrow, every prisoner in this block stops working, stops eating, stops following orders. And when Governor Rockefeller asks why Sing Sing went on strike, I'll personally make sure your name is on the front page." The guards released Marcus. Bumpy helped him up and took him back to his cell. But Morrison had heard everything, and he was furious. March 15th, 1963. 2:15 p.m. Morrison called every available guard, 12 men armed with Winchester rifles. He ordered all prisoners locked in their cells, all except Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy was brought to the central yard, alone. Morrison entered with the 12 guards around him, rifles aimed. "Johnson, it's over. You've been causing trouble since you got here. Intimidation, organizing gangs, threatening guards. I won't tolerate it anymore." Bumpy stood still, calm, hands in his pockets. "What exactly are you going to do, Warden?" Morrison stepped forward. "I'm going to teach you a lesson. You're going to kneel, beg for forgiveness, and spend the next 2 years in solitary. Or my men shoot. It's simple." That was when Bumpy said those 7 words. "Shoot, and explain it to the governor afterward." Morrison went pale. "What?" Bumpy took his hands out of his pockets, slowly, letting everyone see he was unarmed. "Warden Morrison, you made 3 mistakes today. Mistake number 1, you underestimated me. Mistake number 2, you think violence solves everything. Mistake number 3, you forgot who I am." Morrison shouted. "Shut your mouth right now." Bumpy continued, his voice echoing across the empty yard. "Right now, 200 prisoners are watching from their cell windows. They're seeing 12 guards pointing guns at an unarmed man. If you shoot, they'll witness it. And tomorrow morning, Attorney Thurgood Marshall will receive a letter. Every prisoner will sign it. Every prisoner will testify that Sing Sing executes unarmed men. Morrison was shaking now. You're bluffing. Bumpy took a step toward the rifles. Am I? Then shoot. But when Governor Rockefeller asks why you killed an unarmed man in front of 200 witnesses, what will you say? That I was dangerous? That I was armed? They'll investigate. They'll find the payments from Frank Costello. They'll discover you're bought. And your career ends. Your life ends. Morrison looked around. The windows of Block D were filled with faces, prisoners watching, witnessing. He looked at his guards. Some were already lowering their weapons. They weren't killers. They were men trying to earn a living. Bumpy continued, "But I'll give you a way out. You lower those guns. You treat me with respect. You stop beating prisoners, and I guarantee no riot happens on your watch. I keep the peace in here. You keep your job. Everybody wins." Morrison was cornered. He knew it. If he shot, he'd destroy his career. If he backed down, he'd lose authority. But Bumpy gave him a third option, a deal. "Lower the weapons," Morrison finally ordered. His voice was broken, defeated. The guards lowered their rifles. Bumpy didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He just nodded. "Thank you, Warden," and walked back to his cell as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. In the weeks that followed, the rules at Sing Sing changed. Morrison stopped the beatings, improved the food, allowed more recreation time, not out of kindness, out of fear that Bumpy would follow through on his threat. And Bumpy kept his end of the deal. He kept the peace. When gangs wanted to fight, he mediated. When prisoners planned riots, he calmed them. He became the real power in Sing Sing. Not through violence, through respect. Bumpy Johnson left Sing Sing in 1968, 5 years later. When he walked through the gates, 200 prisoners banged on their cell bars, not in protest, in respect, salute, a ritual reserved only for kings. Morrison was forced to retire 6 months later. A federal investigation uncovered his mafia ties. He spent the rest of his life in obscurity. The story of the yard confrontation became legend, not just in Sing Sing, but throughout the entire prison system. The story of the man who faced 12 rifles and won, without firing a shot, just with words, with strategy, with the truth. Because in the end, Bumpy Johnson proved something most people never understand. Real power doesn't come from guns. It comes from knowing when to use them and when to hold them back. It comes from turning enemies into allies. It comes from always being 3 steps ahead. 12 rifles aimed, 1 unarmed man, and 7 words that changed everything. Shoot, and explain it to the governor afterward. That's the difference between strength and power. Strength is making people obey out of fear. Power is making people obey out of respect. And on that day in Sing Sing, Bumpy Johnson showed the difference, forever.